Good evening, viewers. Today we're examining the recent events in Venezuela in a straightforward, fact-based manner. I am drawing from multiple sources, including international reports, election data, and official statements from all sides. Venezuela's story is complex, involving economic collapse, political disputes, and international involvement. Let's break it down chronologically. Venezuela, once one of Latin America's wealthiest nations due to its vast oil reserves, began facing severe challenges in the late 1990s under President Hugo Chavez, who took office in 1999. The country pursued socialist policies aimed at reducing inequality through oil-funded social programs. Chavez's government nationalized key industries and redistributed wealth, but critics argued it led to corruption, inefficiency, and over-reliance on oil exports. By Chavez's death in 2013, oil prices were high, but underlying issues like inflation and debt were mounting. Nicolas Maduro, Chavez's successor, won the 2013 election amid opposition claims of irregularities. Maduro's administration inherited a booming oil market but faced a sharp decline in global oil prices starting in 2014. This triggered hyperinflation, food and medicine shortages, and a humanitarian crisis. According to the United Nations, by 2024, over 7 million Venezuelans had fled the country, seeking refuge in neighboring nations like Colombia and Brazil. The government attributed the woes to U.S. sanctions and external sabotage, while opponents blamed mismanagement, corruption, and authoritarian tactics. International sanctions began intensifying in 2017 under the U.S. administration of President Donald Trump, targeting Venezuelan officials for alleged human rights abuses and drug trafficking links. The U.S. accused Maduro's inner circle of ties to narco cartels, dubbing it the Cartel of Sons. Maduro's government deepened alliances with Russia, China, and Iran for economic and military support. Russia provided weapons and advisors, while China offered loans. These partnerships helped the regime weather isolation but fueled accusations of foreign interference. In 2018, Maduro won re-election, but the vote was widely condemned as flawed by the U.S., European Union, and Organization of American States, OAS. The opposition boycotted it, and the U.S. recognized opposition leader Juan Guaido as interim president in 2019. Protests erupted nationwide, with security forces responding forcefully. Human rights groups like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch documented excessive force, arbitrary arrests, and extrajudicial killings. Maduro's government denied these claims, asserting they were defending against coup attempts backed by foreign powers. The crisis deepened through the early 2020s. Venezuela's economy contracted by over 75% since 2013 per IMF estimates. Hyperinflation peaked at millions of percent annually, rendering the currency worthless. Basic goods became scarce, leading to widespread malnutrition. Maduro's administration implemented dollarization informally and erased some controls, stabilizing parts of the economy by 2023. But inequality persisted. Politically, the regime cracked down on dissent. Opposition figures were jailed, media outlets censored, and elections manipulated, according to the observers like the Carter Center. This brings us to the pivotal 2024 presidential election on July 28. Maduro sought a third term against opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez, backed by prominent figure Maria Corina Machado, disqualified from running by the government. The National Electoral Council, CNE, controlled by Maduro's allies, declared Maduro the winner with 51% of the vote to Gonzalez's 44%. However, the opposition, through a network of volunteers, collected over 83 of voting tallies from polling stations, claiming Gonzalez won with 67 to 70%. Independent analysis, including from the Carter Center and UN experts, criticized the process for lack of transparency and irregularities. The CNE refused to release detailed results, citing a cyber attack. Post-election protests swept the country. Demonstrators clashed with huge security forces, resulting in at least 27 deaths and over 2,000 arrests, per Human Rights Watch. Maduro's government labeled the unrest a fascist coup and intensified repression, detaining opposition leaders and journalists. Internationally, the US, EU, and several Latin American countries recognized Gonzalez as the rightful winner, while Russia, China, and Cuba supported Maduro. The US reimposed oil sanctions, halting a brief easing in 2023. Through 2025, the standoff persisted. Maduro remained in power, but his regime faced international fractures, including military defections. Economic hardship continued, with oil production at historic lows, despite the world's largest reserves. Opposition leaders like Machado and Gonzalez went into hiding or exile. Gonzalez fled to Spain in September 2024 after an arrest warrant. Reports from WLA, Washington Office on Latin America, highlighted ongoing political persecution, with over 1,700 political prisoners by mid-2025. Maduro's alliances with Russia grew, including joint military exercises, raising U.S. concerns about foreign influence in the Western Hemisphere. Tensions escalated dramatically in the late 2025. U.S. intelligence cited increased drug trafficking, cartel protection by the regime, and Russian strategic presence as threats. On January 3, 2026, the date of this video's context, U.S. forces conducted military strikes on Venezuelan targets, capturing Maduro and his wife in a targeted operation. President Trump announced the action as necessary to end narco-terrorism and restore democracy, stating U.S. oil companies would invest billions to revive production. He claimed Vice Presidency Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in and that the U.S. would temporarily run Venezuela for a transition. Reactions were swift and divided. Venezuelan streets erupted in celebrations with crowds tearing down Maduro statues, echoing 2024 protests. Opposition leaders like Machado called for Gonzalez to assume power immediately, urging the military to recognize him. However, Rodriguez from Russia denied any transition and affirmed Maduro's legitimacy. International responses varied. Russia condemned the strikes as illegal aggression. Cuba called it state terrorism, and Brazil monitored borders for refugees while criticizing the intervention. The UN Secretary General warned of a dangerous precedent, and the Security Council scheduled an emergency meeting. Domestically in the U.S., Democratic lawmakers decried the strikes as unauthorized and illegal without congressional approval, while supporters argued it addressed humanitarian crisis. Venezuela's oil exports halted amid the chaos, exacerbating global energy concerns. In summary, Venezuela's trajectory from oil boom to crisis stems from economic mismanagement, political polarization, and external pressures. The 2024 election dispute crystallized divisions, leading to the 2026 U.S. intervention. While some view this as liberation from authoritarianism, others see it as imperial overreach risking regional instability. Regarding the likelihood of U.S. troops engaging in prolonged ground fighting, based on current reports, the operation appears focused on targeted strikes and regime removal rather than a full invasion. Trump has emphasized a quick transition, with opposition figures ready to govern. However, a power vacuum could lead to resistance from Maduro loyalists or allied militias, potentially drawing the U.S. forces for stabilization. Analysts from the Council on Foreign Relations estimate a 40 to 60% chance of limited ground involvement in the short term, weeks to months, to secure key sites like oil fields, but a large-scale ground war is less likely, around 20 to 30%. If the Venezuelan military defects en masse or international diplomacy de-escalates, factors like Russian response or refugee flows could heighten risks. For now, the situation remains fluid, with diplomacy urged by global bodies. This is an evolving story. Stay informed through diverse sources. Thank you for watching.